So I'm not talking about resilience for tourism as an industry, but rather how tourism itself can contribute towards the resilience of natural or cultural systems, and why and how we should do this and why we should care. And the term resilience is one that's getting increasingly used. We've been hearing, I mean, the Trump administration is phasing out the term sustainability. Personally, I think the term CSR has been phased out. I see that as dead. That's very much corporations responding to policy, and it always feels like somebody else's responsibility. Resilience is a very useful term because we don't even have to discuss the reasons why we're doing things. We don't have to bridge the argument or address the argument about climate change. In fact, who wouldn't want people to be more resilient to change in the future? And the term resilience really refers to either nature or people being able to overcome hardship. Being resilient is your ability to adapt to change. Whether that change is a rare individual event like a tsunami, whether it's change due to human population growth or the byproducts of that human population growth. The one thing that is constant is actually change. And we have to be able to adapt to this change, we have to be prepared for this change, not only as an industry, but also the environment and the culture on which we belong, we depend. Because when it comes down to it, a large portion of tourism is intrinsically dependent on the natural and cultural environment where we operate. In the words of the Better Business, Better World, businesses cannot survive in communities that fail. Businesses cannot survive in societies that fail. Therefore, it is our responsibility, not only as a business sector, but as individuals, to ensure that we protect and we enhance the resilience of the communities where we operate. And in turn, this secures the resilience of us as an industry as well. Because you don't have to be a scientist to appreciate the beauty of a natural system. And the question is when it gets impacted, not always due to our control, but sometimes due to global events outside of our control, the loss of this habitat, which underpins our businesses, is something that we need to be able to be resilient to. Because we're in the session on destination marketing. And how do you market something if it cannot adapt and change to this sort of impact? How do you market the Maldives? Do you market to say, well, quick, come visit it before it's gone? But how is that going to affect the people that are actually resident and the Maldivians that live there, the systems that are there? And in fact, one may argue that adaptation by itself isn't even possible now. How can the Maldives adapt to a rising sea level, when in fact what we need to do is we need to address the underlying causes? Now, to talk about this, I didn't want to talk about the underlying causes. I want to avoid the whole argument about climate change. But as an industry, hospitality and the tourism industry is undergoing very rapid growth, sustained rapid growth. And therefore we're in a position where we can exercise that impact and that value from our business in order to have considerable impact to enhance those lives around us. In fact, the UN General Assembly in 2017 acknowledged that tourism can be a positive instrument for change, can help eradicate poverty, protect the environment, improve the quality of life, empower women and the youth, and can contribute towards the strengthening of peace on Earth. Now, this is a very ambitious statement. Much like the Sustainable Development Goals, these are very ambitious goals. But if we set a high goal and we don't achieve it, we will at least work towards that sort of target. And we just had a very interesting talk before me, talking about this sort of impact tourism. And so I'm not going to speak on behalf of necessarily exactly what Banyan Tree does and Banyan Tree Global Foundation do. Instead, I want to sort of use some examples to show you just how we can tackle some of these things. Because sometimes these challenges are far too big for us to tackle as individuals or even as individual companies. And it requires a collective effort in order to make this change. This idea of continued growth is one that's actually quite challenging. I mean, everybody's forecasting a bit of doom and gloom, perhaps another 2008, a whole economic crisis. If you look at a group known as the Pinocchians, they're a group of companies, mostly from Europe and from Japan, that have been around for over 200 years. How does a company survive for 200 years? They don't do this by 15% growth year on year. Sometimes they do this by ensuring longevity of their own business at the cost of short-term growth in order to look at those long-term gains. And so the UNWTO identified these 5 pillars that tourism can address in order to enhance resilience and also to address the Sustainable Development Goals. In terms of sustainable economic growth, I mean, we contribute that through the jobs, through ensuring that we support those in the communities where we operate. We need to ensure that we are socially inclusive. And the things that I'm saying, these apply to, it doesn't matter where you are within that service chain, whether you're a tour operator, a hotelier, whether you're on the ground or what aspect you're working in. We need to provide positive employment, and we also need to engage with the youth as well as the women, which is why the previous talk was good to see. Engaging with social enterprise to provide access to the industry from those at risk of societal inclusion, but also going beyond just our own employees and looking at the opportunities within the communities. Taking it beyond our own boundaries and extending the boundaries of our influence towards the schools, towards the youth within those communities. And these images that you're seeing, these are all from projects that the Global Foundation, that Banyan Tree have been addressing worldwide in order to address some of these. This also includes what we purchase and how we purchase. The provenance, where something comes from. This isn't always, just because you're purchasing local, does not always mean that it is sustainable. We should be looking to support sustainable production, novel sustainable production methods, supporting local livelihoods. Therefore, by providing the diversity of livelihoods, we're contributing towards the resilience of communities where we operate. The third pillar is for the environment and climate. Now, for most of us that are running hotels, for most of us this results in operational efficiency. And essentially all we end up doing is minimizing and maximizing our operations to become more and more efficient. Now, this is a good first step, but this is not a long-term solution, because if you're continuing to grow and develop your business, then your net output of emissions is going to continue to go up, regardless of how efficient you become. So in the long run, hospitality needs to make a commitment, and we need to move towards the Paris Agreement and move towards renewable energy. Now, everything that I'm saying, this all sounds like lovely wishful thinking. We've all come on to exactly how we can even accomplish this. But when it comes to the environment, we saw in the previous talk that travellers increasingly are looking to connect with the natural and cultural heritage of the destinations to which they visit. And getting our travellers to engage, to promote responsible travel, is a key aspect of our success, if we're going to be successful in making this change. Engaging our travellers with the communities to create shared value in order to make a change, whether it be to go out to clean the environment, whether it be to restore coral reefs in the Maldives, whether it be to go out and plant trees. In the last 10 years, we've planted 500,000 trees by bringing together travellers, the communities, and planting these within the community where they meet. And it's not just planting trees for the sake of offsetting. It's about planting trees which also provide a service, whether it's shade or food, or contributes towards increasing soil stability, about making a positive change within the community. The fourth one is the preservation of cultural heritage. And this requires not only us becoming stewards and safeguarding the cultural heritage, the reasons why our travellers visit this destination. If we dilute this and then we end up losing this, then we end up in a situation where the reasons for even visiting in the first place are gone. This again requires us to connect with our local communities and to promote and to preserve for prosperity, but also for continuity, historical and also living cultures and arts. When we talk about what makes culture, like many of these things, it's quite nebulous, it's very hard, it's an intangible, we don't have it on our budget lines. But when we talk about culture, it's not only, it's that sense of place. It's the people, it's the food, it's the music, it's the sounds, it's all of these come together. Each one of these, if we connect travellers before they visit a destination, and then when they're there, we connect them to that destination. And then after they leave, they still keep that connection with that location. And the last one is understanding peace and security. And this is basically partnerships. What I said earlier is, we often have to forget the short term to start looking at the long term in order to save and promote this resilience. We cannot achieve these goals alone. And in fact, in order for us to achieve anything, we have to come together and to form these partnerships. One of the biggest challenges, though, is that when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals in tourism, one of the biggest challenges is that there's no defined guidance for tourism. There's no requirements to report on sustainability. There's nothing specific that's given to tourism to know what to do. For example, the Global Reporting Initiative, they require that they have specific guidance for different business sectors, but tourism, as of yet, still does not have it. And often tourism, despite the fact that 1 out of 5 new jobs are created relating to this industry worldwide, at the moment, tourism is rarely involved within the policy making and the decision making that we see. Okay, so that's all well and good. Okay, that's a lot of that is very wishful thinking. So I want to talk a little bit about, well, how exactly do we go about doing that? Because often some of these challenges are far too big. I mentioned this idea of sustainability. In some places, people even worrying about sustainability because simply by operating, you're having an impact and then you're constantly catching up. The idea is to connect sustainability with stewardship, this ownership within our destinations and also within our travellers. And by that, we can then promote resilience. Now, when it comes to trying to do this strategically, this is the guidelines that we have within Banyan Tree from the Global Foundation. And we operate to 3 core pillars. One being the conservation of resources, the second, embrace the environment, and the third, to empower people. And then we connect these with our travellers and our guests so that they can actually participate and actually be part of that environment and that culture when they visit. The challenge for a lot of this is, where do you get the money? Now, there's quite a few hospitality companies, not just Banyan Tree, that have sustainable financing mechanisms. We have our Green Imperative Fund, Marriott have their Dollars for Deeds, I believe Sonnebar, they have like a carbon tax. And the thing is the point here is, it doesn't just have to be high-end tourism that can contribute. It doesn't even have to take money in order to have a positive influence. Simply having people going out and engaging with the community, promoting responsible travel, can make that positive impact. Our sustainable financing mechanism is a shared one, in the sense that when guests stay for each night, they make a $1 or $2 contribution, but the hotels match that and put their money where their mouth is, dollar for dollar. And then the key to that is explaining to people what impact that has. I mean, do you want to give your money to someone if you don't know where it goes or what impact it has? At the end of the day, you want to be able to see a measurable and defined change. The challenge with this is we want to quantify things, especially nowadays that sustainability is heavily into annual reporting, but we need to connect on a personal level. It can't just be about the numbers and the change. It's about the stories of the lives of the people that you've touched and impacted. So this for me is a very simple idea. This is a work through of how do you get to making that positive change. The first step is education. And this comes through all forms and at all levels through tourism. When we're talking about education, I quite like the form. This is by rare.org. And this is their process to making a conservation change. The very first step is the knowledge. Educating people, giving them the knowledge, making them aware of an issue. It doesn't matter if they agree with that knowledge. Even if people disagree and they start debating and they argue about it, the very first step is to get people talking. If we can get people talking, this is the first stage to break down those barriers, to then getting people to start changing their behaviour. The goal with this sort of education is to create a participatory sort of engagement, almost like a co-creation of the value with your guests when they visit that destination. And sometimes we don't always want that to be rigid and formalized. So for example, in one of our resorts in the Maldives, the guests will often, we used to have guided snorkels, right? So you go out in the water, somebody tells you all about the ocean, and you get to understand why it's important, why we should protect it. Now, it's not formalized in that way, because our associates, our staff members, they're so proud of their environment that it's not somebody from water sports that takes it. It could be your waiter, it could be your room boy. Essentially, by interacting with the guests, sharing what they're proud of, their natural or their cultural heritage, and then sharing that experience with somebody from that country, creates a much more memorable experience. And then that's the step that starts creating this stewardship. So our approach to develop this stewardship is starting with this education and moving towards a participatory approach, whereby it doesn't matter the age, young or old, you can engage with something that leaves a lasting impact at that destination. These sometimes can be both active, but also some people aren't that active. Some people want to engage in a more passive manner, and they just want to listen or watch, or smell and eat. So the key for this though is once you get this participation, it's about getting the engagement not only with our guests, but also with the communities, and bringing those people together. And only then can you create either a meaningful change to somebody's life, or this meaningful experience that a lot of travellers are looking for when they go. I would hasten to add, the key thing about this that we found in our experience though, is it doesn't matter how much good you want to do. You can't force your love onto someone. You can't go out into the community and go, look, trust me, I know what's best for you, accept my money, let me make your life a lot better. In order for this to be successful, you have to have an engaged approach with your stakeholders. And sometimes this is actually very difficult because your stakeholders don't want to talk to you. Sometimes we only listen to those that talk or speak the loudest, and that's all we hear. But the longer you're engaged with the community, soon people will start to open up. It's about building that trust at that destination. So so that then we can get that stewardship. And once you've got that stewardship, this is then the final step towards achieving that resilience that I mentioned at the very beginning. Now, when we talk about resilience, the government has one view and the business has another. The government sees it as social equity and environmental quality, and generally most businesses see it as continuing our business and reducing our operational costs. But as I said at the very beginning, tourism is intrinsically dependent on the natural and cultural heritage of a destination. So if ever there's a business sector that is in a prime position to make a positive change and actually is in most alignment with the similar sort of thought that the government is, then it's tourism. And the thing is unless we start getting these partnerships developed, some of these challenges are simply too big for us to tackle by ourselves. Only when we can bring others together. Like, for example, within the Maldives, it's generally seen now. I'm using Maldives as a reference because although I'm in a suit, I'm normally in a wetsuit. This morning I came from Indonesia, later on I'll be back in the Maldives, and that's where I'm normally based. So while don't let this corporate look fool you, my hands are normally grubby and dirty by doing these sorts of things. Now, in the Maldives, it's now expected that every single resort has a marine biologist on site. So they've gone from just having divers, but now every resort, you cannot build a new resort there unless you have this engagement with guests to raise awareness about the environment. And this means doing conservation work, feeding it to the government so they can understand what change is happening. And this is somewhat progressive, but I do believe that worldwide we are moving in this sort of direction, whereby business is able to contribute significantly towards the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And governments are increasingly going to be turning towards us because we can mobilize resources, manpower, funds, and we can support in ways that others cannot. Like I said though, we have to bring the stakeholders together in order to do this. We don't always have the internal capacity in order to do this. So by partnering with unique partnerships, whether it be with NGOs or even bridging cross sectors. So we, as a company, we have partnerships with universities and academic institutions, and we open up our doors at our location so that the academics who can help do all of the science behind preserving these environments, we facilitate the access to these destinations. Not only that, that enhances the value of the guest stay because then they get this level of interaction that before they haven't been able to get. And then they're on the front line of conservation efforts. I say conservation, that can be environmental or cultural. And then I will finish off with this and just mention about the importance of communicating. And I'll put my hands up and say that Banyan as a company, we've not been very good at this. But something, when it comes to communication, all too often you see companies, they're greenwashing. They're putting the story before they've actually had much impact or the action. We just celebrated our 25th year and we've realized that, okay, we haven't really communicated because if we want everybody else to be able to learn from our mistakes and to not make those same mistakes, then there has to be this dialogue. Communication has to be a dialogue. When it comes to our stakeholders, it cannot just be us telling them, we need to be listening as well. And as an industry and as a sector, we need to listen to each other, we need to communicate to each other, and also we need to communicate to our market as well. Because if you've all seen the recent Booking.com surveys and whatnot, we've got Generation Z, or Z, depending on what nationality you are, coming out soon. Soon, they're going to be 2 billion people. They're going to be the largest demographic on the planet. And the thing is we are duty bound to communicate what we're doing, why we're doing it, but also the mistakes that we've made. Because we're not perfect. I will finish with one final statement on those lines, and that is that we should not be afraid to fail. We should simply be afraid to try. And when it comes to tackling some of these large global threats, the best thing that we can do when there are so many challenges that we face is we speak to our stakeholders and we find one that we have shared value towards. We address that one. Start off with one. Everything starts off small and then it grows and grows until eventually you get a movement. I just came from Banyan this morning in Indonesia, and our teams there celebrated International Coastal Cleanup Day. And normally we get a few people together, we do a community cleanup, and in Banyan they actually now have this sustainable tourism group where all the hotels come together, and this year we organised one second year in a row, and they had 37,000 people come together, all of the community members, the businesses, in order to clean the environment. This doesn't happen overnight. This is something that you have to persevere at to make this impact. So there is no global blueprint. All we can do is try. Thank you very much.